Hello everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Jaideep Bansal, who is the COO of GHE Global Himalayan Expedition, and Mr. Gagan, who is the technology leader at GHE. So we'll be having a short interaction with them. So
So first, Gagan, I would like to ask you, how did the idea of GHE came into your mind? First, you were at IIT Bombay, a technocrat. Then you started to work for a multinational firm. As you also mentioned in your talk that you had an opportunity to go out, especially to London. So how did this opportunity came into existence, and what led you to take such an adventurous decision at a point when you were at the high of your professional career?
So thanks for inviting us to IIM Shillong. It's a beautiful campus, and it was really great to interact with the students. Now, the initiative Global Himalayan Expedition was started in 2013 by Paras Lumba, and he got the inspiration when he traveled to Antarctica on a leadership trek to witness the first-hand impact of climate change on our environment and how it is really melting the icebergs in Antarctica. And when he came back, he was so inspired that he quit his job with National Instruments and he started this initiative. And at that time, the idea was how can we take travelers from all over the globe to the Himalayas and create an impact in the communities there. And at Luxor, as it I had the privilege to be part of this first expedition. And when I went on the expedition, so when you are for 14 days in the mountains with no Facebook, no WhatsApp, you end up talking to people, right? And when you talk to people, I mean, the other participants that were there, besides meeting Paras himself, there were people like from Cycle for Water who had cycled from the North Pole to the South Pole to raise awareness for drinking water. And they did this for 2 years while working with KPMG. And so when you meet people like this, you get really inspired and you start thinking, what are you doing with your life? And so I think that was a trigger to sort of get associated with GHE. I initially began as a volunteer for the first couple of years, and then I took a sabbatical, got in, on the ground for 4 months in the villages. Really got to experience what village electrification really means, and then that's how we are now part of the team.
So what was your story, Gagan?
So my story, I came in 2015. So from some word of mouth, I came to know about GHE. And once you are at the expedition, away from the world, and when you have that direct impact you are doing to a community, is actually a very enriching experience. And there are two important things that happened in that expedition. First of all, it was very fascinating to know that how Paras or how Robert had such a big vision for this planet. And climate change is actually a real issue, and we all know from a day-to-day basis. And so I can't just, so when I went back to my job, so it was haunting me on day-to-day basis, because the second thing happened was that I became very confident and I got that courage that whatever it may happen, but if you can take those steps forward, you can, and you are really passionate about making them change. So 6 months later, I dropped an email to Paras that I want to do this, and that's the story.
so Jaideep, you said GHE is a for-profit social enterprise. So where is it that the stream of continuous cash flows come from to manage the daily operations as well as run the organization?
Yeah, so one of the things that when we started off, we realized that it has to be a for-profit venture, because then our interests are linked in with the community development. And so if the community is getting uplifted, we earn income, and if there's no income for the community, we don't earn anything. And so that's why this model of being a for-profit, and the way we run it is we conduct these traveler expeditions to these remote villages, where as part of the expedition, travelers get the experience to electrify a village. And so their expedition fee has the cost of the solar grid material, has all the taxes and the logistics cost, and there's also some profit margins for our team. And that allows us to put food on the table. And then besides that, we have the homestays that we run in these areas. Once the villages get electrified, we promote homestays in these villages and promote them through all the online platforms like Booking.com, Airbnb, and we have our own website. So travelers can then book these homestay experiences, trek to these villages, and get an authentic experience of staying with the villages. And in return, they pay the community money for that experience. And so there's a revenue sharing model that we have the community, where 80% goes to the community and 20% comes to us. So there are multiple revenue streams that we have, and so far it's working well for us.
we say that changes is the only constant. So what are the type of challenges that you face while encountering and going towards electrification of villages in such remote areas? What are the type of challenges in a sense of economics? What are the language barriers, the local people as well as the government? What are the different challenges that you face?
So I think the biggest challenge is just the remoteness and the logistics. There's no mobile connectivity, there's no internet, there's no way to ensure that the stuff you have sent from Leh has reached the village or not. There's no way to communicate. And so you have to be very sure of every single nut bolt. So even if you're missing one wire bundle, the entire electrification can get stopped because you then have to trek 2 to 3 days back to get that wire bundle, right? So logistics is a big challenge. But what we've been doing to overcome that is to really get the community to participate. So we have a lot of people at the community level from the villages that we electrify who have come out as entrepreneurs and who help us with this entire electrification work. Right from managing our stores to the transport of the material to ensuring that it reaches the village, and to, so there's a lot of faith and trust. And it's funny, because even though there's no mobile, you can be very sure of everything. So in today's world, when we follow up with people every 5 minutes, have you reached, have you reached? There you just have to tell them, and then after, when you go to the village, everything would be there. So there's a lot of faith and trust that you put in the communities, and you get that return in terms of, when you see that everything is in place. So logistics was the biggest challenge, and politically I think it's been great that we have had the support of the local government leaders in terms of enabling us with the electrification, in terms of in a way helping us to identify these areas where we have to go sometimes because they're not on Google Maps. You just can't go and find these villages. So the political leaders sometimes come to us that we have 5 villages in our constituency, can you help us? So that way it's been a good support with the local government. Any challenges that you can think of?
Yeah, communication is, I think, the biggest challenge. There is another challenge which you may think that should be the case. Like a couple of people already asked that, are the community really ready for that advancement, that change in their life? But hasn't been the case till now. Especially electrification, of course. Also about tourism, because homestays means there will be strangers coming from across the world and staying in the village. But what we have experienced is the locals are really actually welcoming, and they really want people to come and visit their places. So yeah, we haven't faced any issue in that sense.
So we were talking about challenges. Do you face any challenges in convincing people to work for you? So the sort of problems that you face when we look at the labor problems.
No, never happened that way. So the thing is, Ladakh inherently is a, you can say it's a tourist destination. We all know about that. So the thing is, there are a lot of youth that is available from these villages who work as local guides, and they take care of local operations. So those are the people which we reach out to help in our operations as well. And in many of the villages where we electrified, so we created entrepreneurs there as well. So the thing is, the base is very strong. Why? Because we enter the village with a message that we are going to come there and install electricity. So it's a lifelong change, positive change you are bringing to the community. So that trust that you build at the base is actually very pivotal for all the operations that we carry on later on in that area. So we never had any problem with that.
According to a latest claim by the Indian government, 100% of our country has been electrified. But we still see that about thousands. I would like to know what is the magnitude of the impact that you are eyeing in the next 3 years, and what do you say about the claim that the government has made that 100% of our country has been electrified?
So look, the Indian government is under Mr. Piyush Goyal, who was the energy minister. They have done a really great job in sort of reaching out to these remote areas and bringing access to electricity. But in the very remote areas where you have these hamlets, 20, 30 houses or 40, 50 houses, it's not possible for a big grid infrastructure to go in. So that's where you have to come up with innovative solutions. And these are the villages we are targeting. So we feel that that in the northern Himalayas, the Indian Himalayan belt, from Ladakh all the way to even the Arunachal, and if you talk about the Seven Sisters of Northeast, there are still many hamlets without access to electricity. And so for us the mission is, how can we leverage what we have learned in Ladakh? So we have electrified 85 villages till now, but how can we leverage that learning and really scale up the work in these remote areas? And then our mission is by 2022 to really impact 1 million lives in these remote areas. So we have our mission, we know we are going to reach there, and of course, we can't work in isolation. So there, in Ladakh right now, we are working with the government also to electrify some of these villages. So we are working hand in hand. It can't be a one-directional approach where you say, I am doing this, the government is doing this. If you can tie hands together, because ultimately there can be only one winner, and that is the community. So if the community gets electricity, that's the ultimate goal for everyone. So if you can tie hands with the government in doing that, it makes a lot
I
of
had a
sense.
follow-up question for you both. So, what was the most beautiful experience that you had during your work at GHE?
You want to start?
So many of them. But I would say I was in, this was last year only, in September. So we were at this village called Ralapu. And so we were all sitting with the community. What we do is when we do electrification, we also get a chance to talk with them. And we were talking about the homestays concept, and we wanted to know that how do you feel about that if we send tourists to your village and they are going to stay in your houses. You know what they said? They said, we will not even charge a penny from any visitor who is coming in the village. Why? Because they say we have never seen any outsiders because we are so remote. And that was very, very touching for me that like they are really actually, craving for meeting outsiders. And they say outsiders are the only source of information for them. So why? Because some of the old people in the village, they can't go anywhere because they can't track and all that. For them, it's like that's their world. That's all it is. And then you reach them. So I think that was the most beautiful.
Jaideep?
For me, it was when we were beginning this electrification work. One of the villages, there was this old guy, and the moment we switched on the light, he just started crying, looked at the light bulb, joined his hands and kneeled down before it. And I had never imagined like this kind of a reaction. Yes, you expect people to dance, be happy, but the fact that it meant so much to him that he started just crying, kneeled down before it and praying, that was truly, I think, inspiring. And I think that's something that motivates everyone in our team. Every time we go to a village, every time the light gets switched on, there's such a wide variety of reactions, and we really look forward to that moment. And that is what really drives everyone in our team to really trek to these remote areas and do the work that we are doing.
So I'd like to know the impact on tourism of your organization. So the magnitude of impact that has been there on tourism in Ladakh and all these places.
So till date, like I said, we have electrified 85 villages, and that has translated to more than 35,000 people who now have access to electricity. And in the process, we've taken more than 1,000 travelers from 60 different countries who have gone to these villages and created that impact. So when you talk about, how can tourism really lead to a tangible impact? The way I tell it sometimes is, imagine if you could take a vacation and create a lifelong impact in the community, and this is exactly what it is. People are there for their vacation, but in a way they're setting up solar panels and bulb holders inside the houses and electrifying these villages. So that's and we call this model the impact tourism model, where it's tourism is creating a tangible impact, and then it leaves the travelers with a lifelong experience.
I would like to know how do you associate with educational institutes? Like you mentioned a few moments back that you have associations with, you are going to associate with INSEAD,
Yeah.
you have associated with Harvard.
Yeah.
So how do you think that this scene can be played in India, associating with IITs and IIMs and other top educational institutes?
So I think what I realized, I've coming from IIT Bombay, there was never a chance in the college to be part of such an experience to go on the ground, because if I would have got that opportunity back then, maybe it would have opened up different doors for me in terms of the thought process. When you are in the college, you are more focused on day one placements. That becomes your sole aim. So I think with the colleges, what we can do is they can, and it's not just us, there are so many other organizations that are creating an impact in the communities. And the students can be given the chance to actually travel to these, with these organizations and see firsthand the impact that they are creating and learn the sustainability model. It just opens up your eyes and ears to so much that is going out there versus just the the normal routine of getting a corporate job. So I think that's where I am Shillong can start this. Why don't you send a group of students to the Himalayas, let them see what impact they can create through social entrepreneurship, what is the circular economic model that you can create in these remote areas. And there's so much that you're learning in the classrooms that you can put to action when you are in these villages and learning from the community. So why not?
A few special adventures that you might have encountered of few moments back we were discussing over tea about your adventures in Indonesia. So can you please share those moments with us here?
You want to share?
I never went beyond Ladakh, but the adventure in Ladakh in itself is it's to the limit at times, because while we were going to Ralakum, we were hit by a snowstorm, and we were at 17,000 feet. So that was very challenging. So there are two parts of the team, right? There are the participants, and there's a leadership team. So being a leader, you can't be vulnerable in those situations, and you have to handle everybody in the team and ensure everyone's safety. So it's a good, you can say, experience in many sense, but yeah, definitely adventurous and to look back at it. So.
Yeah, and most of these areas, because they are remote, you are at the mercy of the nature. There could be a snowstorm, there could be a landslide, but then of course, the areas where we take our travelers are the more safer areas. But sometimes we do end up venturing into areas where it's a bit risky to go. When I was surveying some villages with the local leader, we were trekking, and then suddenly the trek route just slipped, and so I slided down, and just got saved. And then this other instance when we were crossing this glacial river stream, and then I put my foot and then wanted to jump across, and then suddenly my foot slipped and I was into the stream getting dragged. Luckily I was saved by my foot getting stuck in a couple of stones, and I was taken out. And we still had a hour-long trek to go, and I was all drenched. And then because it was the month of October, it was cold. There was ice all on my jeans and shirt, and then we were trekking. So there are adventures, but then of course you have to take it in. I mean, you are at the mercy of nature. The nature can be good. Sometimes it can go against you. But what we realize is, because of the blessings that we have from the villages that we are visiting and that we have electrified, I think, and at the end of the day, we are here.
So we would end it here. On behalf of the entire I Am Shillong community and the thousands of students from all across the country that are watching you right now, I would like to thank you for sharing your valuable insights and experiences. I would just like to say that you have taken the road less taken, and that has made all the difference. And especially students from top business schools would get inspired by your story and take the road less taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.